for the month of August. I feel like this thing's hitting me in the back of my head. Let's shift. Hey everyone, and welcome back to Rooted in Blooms. Today we are going to take a look at the garden, have a full garden tour, and see what has been going on in the month of August. I'd like to say it's been a lot, but it hasn't. So let's be honest. We're in late summer right now, and we've had a lot of plants that have either died by pests, died by drought, died because I neglected them. Regardless, there's been a lot of things that have been removed from the garden. We've got other things that were planted later in the season that are not growing as quickly as I'd hoped. But regardless, we've got some growth. We've got some tomatoes to look at. That's fun, exciting. We've got some beautiful flowers behind me. So we're going to count our blessings and what we can get in the month of August. Because if you are a gardener and you have made it this far, I'm talking to you right now, sitting in your chair at home, or maybe you're standing, I don't know. But if you've made it this far in your own garden journey and you have conquered the month of August, however that looks for you, please take a moment to give yourself a pat on the back. Gardening in August is not easy. It is hot, it is humid, it is full of pests, and oftentimes it's the last thing we want to do is come out here and tend to our plants, because even in the morning hours we're looking at hot humid temperatures, and in the evenings we're looking at mosquitoes. But again, if you have stuck through with your garden at this point, you deserve a reward. In any case, let's go take a look at the garden, see how it's been this month, and we'll discuss maybe some plans for the future. We are transitioning to the fall garden, and I'm looking forward to some cooler temperatures, not gonna lie, and some transition spaces. But for now, let's go ahead and celebrate the wins that we had this month and take a look and see what the garden's got. Come on, let's go. If you watched my latest garden chores video, then you know that I recently just kind of cleaned up this whole space here. So previously on the ends, I had a couple of tomatillo plants. They were done for the season, so we took those out. And then in these 3 pots here, I was left with some Romas. The tomatoes this year have not been doing well again. But these guys do appear to be in good health. They are putting on some new growth, new fruit, new blooms. Problem's been, even with the new growth, the squirrels are still getting to them. So very frustrating. I almost feel like I'm at my wit's end. I don't know what to do about the squirrels. If you guys have any suggestions, let me know. So I am in city limits. I don't know what I can do, but unfortunately we have these, huge tree line that is just full of squirrels, and they do come down here and eat my tomatoes. I do occasionally send the dogs out to chase after them when I see it happen, but otherwise I know they're taking my fruit. For example, this one here was loaded just a few days ago and now it's completely empty. So very sad, but I do have these 3 Supremo Romas. So it's a variety I bought from Botanical Interest. This one here in the middle was planted later, which is why you see it on kind of a shorter, smaller side. I was really hoping that we would have some really good success with the Romas this year. This is my first year growing Romas, and I've never had any type of success. So any ways to squirrel proof, let me know. In this space, I have 2 oval beds. These are 2-foot by 4-foot beds. And previously, at the beginning of the garden season back in spring, I had these filled with cabbages, kale, some broccolini. All of that, of course, has been picked. And in its place, I planted another, what you can see here, This is another Supremo tomato, so Supremo Roma. This was planted at the same time that middle pot one that's a little bit smaller. You know, we do see some fruit on it as well, so that's hopeful, as well as some blooms. And then down the middle of these beds, I wasn't really thinking this through when I planted this out in the spring, but I planted leeks. You can tell they're really small. They're very tiny. They're healthy. They bounced back because previously the cabbages had laid on top of them, but at least they're, you know, they look pretty good. In fact, some of these on the end look better than others. For example, this one here. But I am gonna go ahead and leave those in there for now, try to get them to size up some more. On the front side here, I have some miscellaneous peppers that I had left over when I was planting everything out. This one on the right is a Megatron jalapeno. I recently just picked these earlier in the week, but you can see we've got some more fruit starting to form and some blossoms as well. So these are doing well. This one next to it is a Anaheim. So in fact, you can see, I'm gonna let this size up a little bit more before picking it. But this has been really successful in terms of growing. And then previously, I also had some lettuce. So you do see some remnants of lettuce. It's just been way too hot for lettuce to grow this time of year, but I will probably come back in and sow some more lettuce for the fall. And then of course I have my, my marigold here. This is a French marigold, which we see very similarly over in this bed. We see another French marigold. Again, we see that line of leeks. So I think these are even called the giant leeks or something like that. Obviously they're not giant, so we need to let these guys size up. In the corner here, I have planted a yellow squash. This thing took off. And if you watched my last video, you know I recently just pruned it back. I killed off a lot of squash bugs, pruned off a lot of dying leaves. This thing is massive, but for whatever reason, it hasn't produced any fruit. So you can see there's a lot of blossoms on it, healthy looking blossoms, but at the same time, you know, if we look closer at the vine, we can see there's probably been some vine borer damage. Definitely have had some battles with squash bugs on it. So I don't know if this is past, you know, the point of producing. It still looks relatively healthy. I'm hopeful that maybe it'll eventually pick up in production. Otherwise, it's very happy in this corner of this bed, but it just isn't doing a whole lot. Along with the squash in this bed, we have some orange hat tomatoes. So these are micro dwarf tomatoes. You can see they're putting on tiny fruit. These will size up to be similar to just a cherry tomato variety, but the actual plants don't get too much bigger than this. And then we also see some remnants of some kale that I chopped down, and I didn't pull the roots out, which is why it's kind of coming back. I probably should go ahead and pull that out at some point, just because I don't think I'm going to want kale in that space for the fall. And then in this space, previously earlier in the year, we did have a couple of ground cherries planted in these larger pots. They were also decimated by squirrels, so I've gone ahead and pretty much picked everything out of these pots. I've got a remnant of a petunia here. It's doing okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and leave it. But I did plant out some nasturtiums in these pots in the hopes of having some nasturtiums maybe bloom for the fall. Otherwise, there's really not much to see here. So on the front of my main beds here, I do have some pots, some grow bags as well. Previously, I had kale and some variety of squash. I've since, of course, pulled all of those, kind of resetting the spaces. I did similarly to what I did in the oval bed. I didn't pull the actual kale plants out, so you can kind of see they're trying to grow back. And depending on the health of it, I might let that happen. And then I've also replanted some round zucchini. Previously, that's what I had in the oval pots. So have a fresh round of round zucchini. I tried planting some beans, bush beans, in the grow bags, and it doesn't look like anything really came up. I've got one down at the end, but You can kind of just see these remnants of the kale that was previously in them. This zucchini is looking pretty good. And this vine here is my loofah plant, which is my first year planting loofah. We'll talk about that later. And of course down here it looks like my zucchini never sprouted, so I might be planting another round of that. And then there's my single bush bean that came up. So this section is actually pretty new. This was added back in June, and these are 15-gallon grow bags. In them I have just filled them with topsoil and some peat moss. Not the greatest combination. I would like to go back and amend these after the season's over with, but my attempt was growing some corn. So I do have some sweet ambrosia corn in each bag. I tried to plant 4 in each bag as like a small cluster. Not all of them germinated. The ones that did are hit or miss in terms of health. I have had to go in and spray these with some BT, which I will put on the screen what that stands for, because I don't think I can pronounce it off the top of my head. Basically, they were being attacked by some caterpillars that were living deep within the leaves, and so using BT is a great kind of organic pesticide solution for getting rid of those caterpillars. They eat the leaf with the BT on it, they get sick and essentially die, I think is how it works, or maybe they can't eat anymore, I don't remember. Anyways, it did the trick. My corn's been able to bounce back. I didn't know, this is my first year growing corn, I did not know that was an issue in terms of pests. I've heard of the problem with you know, the worms at the end that can like get in and eat the kernels. I didn't know at the beginning that they would feed on the leaves. So that was kind of a learning curve for me, but like I said, I did treat them. They've been doing a lot better. And then in each bag too, I have a plant of the giant lettuce leaf basil. So this is similar to just your Genovese variety, but the leaves are very big. Some of them, let me see if I have a good example here. Some of them get really, really big. So this has been really nice to have for recipes in the kitchen. You can see this one actually succeeded in growing all 4 stalks in the bag, which it might be too tight. Again, this is my first year growing corn, so this is very much an experimental section. Also experimenting with this side of the yard. It's a bit of a challenge because we do have this privacy fence, but as you can see, it does get hit with sun, and as the afternoon comes in, the shadows will recede against the wall more, which will shed more light on these grow bags. So we'll see how things do here, and that'll help me determine planning for the future. So with the arch trellis, it is pretty sad looking at this time of year. A couple of episodes ago, if you watched, I had a massive cucumber plant, some pumpkin, some other squash that was just kind of done for the season. So it was taken out. I did leave this loofah vine here. Again, this is my first year planting it. And you can see, I don't know what the typical growing patterns of loofah is, but it doesn't look great. It picks up again, it kind of wraps around this trellis, and then literally this is my first very misshapen loofah fruit that I'm getting. It's probably too late in the season to even hope for more loofah. I'm gonna go ahead and let it do whatever it's doing right there, because at least I can walk away with something. And so I don't know if, you know, it was underperforming this year because of being planted in a grow bag. Maybe I needed to stay on top of fertilizing it. Really, the whole garden, I didn't do much in terms of fertilizing. I should have, but I just didn't have the time. And you would think by now, at 9 months old, she would not be getting in my garden beds. So yeah, I don't know if it would have done better planted in the actual bed where it has access to ground nutrients. I tried to stay on top of watering it. I'm continually watering it every day. But it just, like I said, it has only literally produced that one very, very sad misshapen loofah gourd. Anyways, any tips on growing loofah, leave them down below. Also underneath here, I did replant another round of cucumbers. So I planted cucumber Space Master 80, 86. Anyways, it's a Space Master, shorter, kind of smaller footprint of a cucumber. Hasn't germinated on this side, but we do see it over here. So this might be the only one I get for the rest of the season. That's okay. It's pretty productive plant, so I'm not too worried about it. And then I still have these long beans that are doing well, so you can see here. In fact, we've got some really pretty blossoms. And those, I've got 3 of them climbing up this trellis. You can see they're kind of mingled in with that loofah plant. And then on this side, I used to have pumpkin and I used to have another squash. I pulled both. What we see here is a remnant of a melon plant that has literally done nothing for me all season. I don't know why. I've had the worst success with melons. It's my 3rd year trying to grow melon, and I can't get it to produce. So maybe it's the wrong variety, but you can see it starts here and it vines out everywhere. But again, no actual fruit. And then of course in the corners here, we have just some squash plants that are relatively newer in terms of when they were planted out. And then hopefully we can get some actual fruit, because it has been an off year for the squashes. Okay, here we have my wall of indeterminate tomatoes. So if you are new to gardening, I think I mention this every time we talk tomatoes, but there are 2 different types of tomatoes. There are indeterminates and determinates. Indeterminates will grow for an indeterminate length of time, indeterminate height. And then a determinate will only grow to be so tall and put on so much fruit. The aromas that we see over here are determinates, which is why I can get away with growing them in these pots with some trellises, whereas these guys are indeterminate, and I give them a big tall cattle panel. So this bed is a 4x16. Cattle panel typically comes in 16-foot length, so that makes it for a perfect trellis for using with indeterminate tomatoes if you have the means of transporting the cattle panel to your house. So garden tip right there. Highly recommend. It's kind of a more of a permanent structure, so if you are looking for something more flexible in terms of moving and changing, you might not want to go with this, but I've been very happy with it. All I have to do is basically tack the tomatoes up occasionally using either zip line or some vegetable tape or something, or string, just to keep it kind of trellised upwards. So starting here at the end, we have my big slicer tomatoes. So this one right here is a Brandywine, and previously it was so slow to start. In fact, all of my tomatoes, this has been the worst year for tomatoes, but as you can see, we have a number of beautiful fruits forming. These guys will get a little bit bigger. So this is a really nice heirloom slicer variety. Hoping that we have enough time left in the season for these to actually ripen up. If not, I'm a fan of green tomatoes, so I'll still make use of them as long as the squirrels don't take off with them. But I think those are maybe a little bit too big for them. The thing with tomatoes is they typically start slowing down production in the fall because it is getting cooler. So, these guys had such a terrible year with all of our rain. But because they are rallying, I'm really hoping that maybe, like I said, I can get some actual ripe fruit from them before the end of the season. Next to my Brandywine here is actually a variety. I'm not 100% sure what it is. It's another big slicer. I purchased this from a nursery as kind of a one of their markdown clearance at the end of the season. I kind of rescued it, put it in the ground. It's been doing pretty good. So we'll see what that turns out to be. And then I've got 2 varieties here of some more Romas. This particular Roma variety, it's called Striped Roma, and it is an indeterminate, whereas the Supremos are determinate. And let me see if I can find, I think the squirrels are big fans of the Romas. I think that's been my problem, because I had some actual pretty decent sized fruit not too long ago, but you can kind of see here they've got, I don't know if it's noticeable, there's some variegation. It's gonna have some variegated lines on the fruit once it ripens, so that should be nice. You can see how tall these guys are getting. So this is easily 8 feet plus tall, you know, on this trellis. And then going down further, we've got some, let's see here, I think it's Brad's Atomic Grape. Another new variety for me this year. Again, it's too bad. I have all these new varieties and it's hard for me to, there they are here. It's hard for me to determine if I like them or not, because I haven't had any real good harvest of tomatoes yet because of the season we've been having. So we'll see how these guys do. And then down here we've got the Sun Gold cherries. So these actually have been doing really well. You can see there's a lot of fruit, fruit that's getting very close to, I could probably come out and pick some of these darker yellow. They turn kind of an orange when they're fully ripe. They are really good. Another first year for me growing these, and at least with these I've been able to pick, but so have the squirrels. So it's been, again, a constant battle with all of these tomato plants. All right, and then down below my tomato plants, I have all the basil. So as you can see, I have not come out here for some time to pick or prune my basil plants. I really need to get in here. What ends up happening is they start to flower, which, as you can see in the case of this Tulsi basil, it's definitely been flowering, but you can also see that the pollinators, you know, they like these guys. So I kind of leave them around just for them, since I'm not actively using the basil at the moment. However, I wouldn't mind coming in and chopping all the flowers off, doing a big batch of harvest, and then brewing. I like to brew the Tulsi basil tea. Is really, really yummy. I would really like using it that way. Tulsi basil is also medicinal. I've never used it for any of those purposes before, but I know some people do. So, you know, if that's something that interests you, you can do a little bit more research into that. Otherwise, it's a great plant that, you know, it will self-seed if you're not careful. I've got it growing all over the garden, and pollinators love it. It smells delicious. It's tasty. Again, we use it primarily for tea, making tea, but it is good in other culinary dishes. It's a little bit of a different flavor profile from your standard Genovese basil, which I do have a regular Genovese basil here. You can see those leaves are much smaller than the lettuce leaf basil when you compare the two. And then of course I have some other great companion plants. I think this might be the only French marigold here, great companion plant with tomatoes. Basil does well, which is why I grow it down here in this line. Again, it has just completely swallowed up the base of this bed, so I do need to come in here and clean that up some. And then on the end of this back side of this bed, I have, growing up the trellis, a few different butternut squashes. So as you can see, some of these desperately probably just need to be put out of its misery, honestly. But we do finally, you know, for the longest time I didn't have anything forming, and it was really kind of disappointing. But we do have, you know, a squash here, and then it's actually one of the squash plants has traveled all the way over here, so it's really kind of eaten up the bottom part. But I'm just letting the garden do its thing. It is late August, and at this point I just kind of let things run wild. It's really hard to contain your garden in the month of August because of the heat and all the bugs, but I kind of just want to see what happens here with it. So but that's what I have growing on the end here, is that butternut squash. On the back side of my tomatoes here, I have yet again more basil. Yes, more basil. I feel like I should just become a basil gardener, because that's about the only thing I can successfully grow, at least this year. Again, we've got flowers everywhere. I need to come in and really top those off. But these are a couple of different varieties from the Tulsi and the Genovese. This is a cinnamon basil, which kind of has a cinnamony kick to it, and then a lemon basil, which has a lemon kick to it. Both of them make really nice teas. Also just nice to like flavor up maybe a salad, or really any dish that you just want something aromatic. Aromatic? Is that the right word? Anyway, nice basil combination's got a Genovese hiding back there too. But again, leaving these flowers for the pollinators at this time. I will come in and clean that up. And then they're kind of toppled over some more French marigolds. And I have a lovely little bush bean here that was planted not too long ago. Heading back up the bed, we do have a handful of volunteer tomatoes. So what does that mean when something volunteers? If you're wondering, if you've never heard that term before, it means that it basically self-seeded itself from last year. So at some point, a critter, maybe a bird, a squirrel probably, ate one of my tomato plants and dropped some seeds into the bed, and they resprouted this year. So I actually have no idea what variety I've got planted. So there's one here, and there is one here, and there is one here. So it could be a cherry tomato variety. I had several of those on the back side of here. If they carried one of my big slicers, it could have been one of those. So we'll see if it actually puts together any fruit. Again, it is getting later in the season, so it's a bit of a gamble, but I'm gonna leave these here for funsies and see what happens. And then you can see kind of tucked back here and here. And then of course, going down the rest of the bed are okra plants. So this one has actually flowered. Okra has really pretty blossoms. If you've never grown okra before, it's a really great attractor for hummingbirds. They really love the blossoms. And of course the fruit is, the pods are just really yummy. I do have a couple different varieties of okra. The main one that I grew, especially down this side of the bed, is the Clemson Spineless. It's kind of your standard, very popular variety most gardeners will grow. It's highly productive, yields great. And then I do have I got a free pack a few years ago of a, I think it's Star of Bethlehem variety. I'll have to double check on that, but it's a slightly larger variety. When you cut into the pod, it looks like a star. So I'll try to find a picture of what that looks like, because I'm pretty sure one of these might be that variety. I'm not 100% sure though. And then hopefully I actually get some to show in video. You know, if they're flowering, hopefully it's a good sign. But yeah, so I've got a ton of okra. This got planted out a little later than I'm used to. I planted this okra after I pulled out my garlic out of this bed. So I pulled my garlic a little later than I thought too. Everything was just behind this season, but this got planted in mid-June, and usually does very well in the heat of late summer, so that's why I think we'll be okay having planted this later. And then in the front of this bed too, just to kind of fill up some space, is some more bush beans that I got planted a few weeks ago. And I still have some green onions just tucked away in random places as well. All right, and then I have two more metal beds. These are 4x8s, so they are matching in length. And on this side, previously in the spring, I had my garlic planted in here as well. Once that got harvested out, I went ahead and planted in some sweet corn. Again, this is new for me. I'm doing a lot of news this year, so maybe that's why I feel like everything's been a failure this season. But you know what? That's all about gardening. If you don't experiment, and it just gets boring, right? So I love to see what works, what doesn't. This is my first year planting corn. I planted it in this bed thinking it would do well. At the time, I had a massive cucumber plant that was actually shading it out. So this corn isn't as tall as what it probably should be at this point. It's been in the ground for well over a month, but we are doing okay. I did get hit with some pest pressure. I had to spray with BT to fix some of the damage. You can even see some of these lower leaves, how they were chewed up. Also, doesn't help that I have a puppy. It doesn't help that I have a puppy that also likes to climb through my beds, and I'm still actively trying to train her not to do that. So this is a sweet corn ambrosia. Sweet corn, supposed to be a quick kind of turnaround corn in terms of maturity, so we'll see how that does. This one down here is creating tassels, so that's fun. Thought it would do that when I got taller, but again, first time growing corn, so I don't know what the growing patterns look like for this thing. In the corner here we have some chives, and then along the edge again we have more bush beans. I would tell you the variety of the bush beans, but if you watched my other video when I planted them out, you would know that my devilish puppy chewed up my bag of beans, spread them all over the yard, and then I had to gather them up. It was a trio pack. It was the one from Botanical Interest, so they're either purple, yellow, or green. I'll put a picture of it in the video. And then down here, you know, I mentioned my sad, pathetic attempt at a melon. Not sure what's going on here. So either the Minnesota midget melon or the petite Renee. I get this wrong every single time. Anyways, I'm about to toss out those packets because they have been nothing but unsuccessful for me the last couple years. And then we got a squash plant here that was planted not too long ago. On the back side of my garden here is this really big custom built bed. This was the first bed I ever started with several years ago when I first got into gardening. I wanted to do it as inexpensive as possible, which is funny because I think the beds on Amazon probably cost less than this bed here. But this is cedar planked fence, privacy fence boards. And so it is I believe it's a 6x6. Pretty sure it's 6x6. Hindsight, not a great size to work in. One thing to be mindful if you're planning on ever building your own garden beds is you want to be able to reach in and easily harvest things in the middle. And obviously in a bed this size, it just isn't comfortable to do that. But regardless, for right now I'm making it work. I do have plans in the future to break this bed down and redo this whole section. So this is actually built on a cement patio slab. Slab is 12 by 12. I would love to get a greenhouse back here at some point and then do some smaller beds around it. So we'll see someday if that ever happens. But for now, we've got this big bed that I still make use of. And right now what we've got in it is we do have green onions, some miscellaneous leeks. These are actually looking way better than the ones in the other bed space. I have also got a ton of volunteer basil, which honestly I just need to come in and pick, pull out, but you can see this did not get planted intentionally. This is Genovese. I think this is also, I'm not really sure if this is also Genovese, but anyway, you can see it all over this bed. Previously in spring, I had this filled up with carrots and radishes. I will be doing something very similar for the fall. They did really well back here, so, but right now, like I said, I've got some volunteer things that just need to be pulled. I did intentionally plant some zucchini, so there's another zucchini here and there as like a late planting for fall. So we'll hopefully see if those grow in. In the middle, I have a big chives plant. So this is a garlic chives, different from the other. There's two different chive varieties. This is more of a flat leaf. You can kind of see here. It is used primarily maybe like in Asian cuisines, but again, you could use it for anything. Right now it is flowering, which is really lovely. The pollinators really like these flowers, so I'm just kind of letting it do that. Again, another mess of a clump of green onion. My goodness, these guys have been here since spring, so they're very big. We'll come out and pick them as needed. On the back side, I attempted to grow some more melons to grow up this A-frame trellis, and you can see them, and you can see they've done nothing. So, experiment flop. And then here again, this is kind of a mess right now. There's a lot of weeds that need to come in and clean up, but I had a couple of carrots that went to seed. So I am, in fact, this one toppled over. Oh, I don't know if I can get in here very easily. You can see this one here. So I need to figure out how to preserve the seeds from these carrots. First year doing that, so it's been kind of a fun experiment. Some more leeks, random leeks and green onions, and again, it will find a spot, it will grow. That Tulsi basil is highly productive. All right, on the back side of this cement slab, I went ahead and mulched. Otherwise, it was just always a weedy mess. The space here between the privacy fence and my cement slab, I love the idea of finding uses of every like square foot of my space that I can garden in. And so this year I have been experimenting with what does it look like to plant back here. Now, as you can see, this gets shaded out by a lot of tree growth. Just for reference, this is east and that is west. So eventually in the afternoon, this does get hit with sun, but it's not a lot. And so at the beginning of the season, I planted a bunch of sunflowers. You can see a remnant of it here, just to see what would happen. Dogs toppled some, ate some, ended up with one. Story of my life this year in the garden. But it did tell me that I might be able to get away with planting some things back here. So when I got my grow bags back in June, I went ahead and threw one down here. I, again, planted some big lettuce leaf basil. It's pretty droopy. It's a little hard to get back here in water, so that is one downside that I'd have to think about in the future. But this, I hope maybe in the fall to plant some lettuce and also just to see how it does back here. So I would love, you know, eventually maybe even to do some smaller garden beds back here if things can successfully grow back here. So that is what this space is about. And this is also where the dogs like to hang out and chew on sticks. You eating sticks? All right, and then on this backside, this other side of the cement slab, I've got in a bunch of different pots, a couple grow bags, some variety of peppers. So these are my hot and spicy peppers. I also pulled a couple of them over here to see. These are Megatron jalapenos. Again, some more Megatrons. They did great. Like early summer, they put on a ton of giant fruit. And then they kind of just stopped. And so I don't know if maybe they were getting overshadowed or overlooked by some of these other peppers, which is why I pulled them out here just to see what would happen. Could very well be they just need a boost of fertilizer. Again, not been great on fertilizing this year in the garden. Really need to stay on top of that and see if that would help. But I do have a couple Megatron jalapenos. I've got a couple of poblanos. So you can see here we've got some fruit forming. These will size up nicely. I have some more Anaheims. Got one actually growing on this plant. And then a ton of shishito peppers, which these guys are not looking very happy, but in terms of plant. But they have also been highly productive for me. But again, this later season in the summer, they've slowed down drastically for me. But overall, I've just been, very happy with the pepper production. And they seem to do pretty well in this back corner. And then I have, let's see, this accidentally got planted here, but this is a sweet pepper. This is a chocolate candy cane pepper, which is just like a snacking pepper, and it's really pretty. It's got this variegated leaves, but it should not be planted with my spicy peppers, because if you didn't know, if you plant your peppers next to each other, spicy and sweet, they will have a little bit of cross-pollination, and sometimes that can make your spicy or your sweet peppers spicy. So just, you want to keep that in mind, especially if you've got young ones, children who want to come out and snack on peppers, or you don't want any surprises in the kitchen. All right, and then we have this big, another big 4x8 bed. This bed's got all sorts of goodies in it. Originally it had my potatoes, which again was a first for me this year. I dug those up in here. Since then I've gone in and planted some additional squash. So you can see here's a yellow squash. And look, baby squash. I get so excited. My squash plants have been abysmal this year, and I actually got a yellow squash earlier this week. And now it looks like I'm getting another one, which is great. Fingers crossed it keeps going. I have remnants of a pumpkin vine that was actually planted in the square bed over here. And you know what? It looks healthy, so I'm gonna leave it, see what happens. Again, just why not? And I got another squash plant here. So it's kind of a squash section. This bed isn't anything anymore. It used to be, I mean, it is chives and oregano, but it's all dead. I mean, I could come in here and pick some of this Greek oregano. It still smells good. Yeah, it still smells good, but it's definitely just kind of spent. So I need to come in and clear this space out here. And then over here is where my sweet peppers are. So, like I said, trying to separate my sweet and spicy by some distance here. I've got a few, let's see, I think I've got three banana pepper plants here. Sweet banana pepper, picked a whole bunch. If you watched my last video, you'd see there were a ton of sweet bananas I picked. Here's some more of those variegated peppers. You can see it's kind of, you know, grows in with some stripes, and then some regular bell peppers in the back, which we've got growing right here. So peppers, again, doing pretty well. Next to the peppers, I have a patch of bush beans. These guys are getting kind of done, I think, for the season. You can see there's some beans on here. They're not very big, but I could come through and pick them. But you can kind of just see by the leaves, they're just kind of done. They're not very healthy, and so it'd probably be best to pick them, pick the beans off of them, and then just reset this whole space. And while some of my experiments this year have been kind of big flops, this area has surprisingly done really well. This is my little flower patch. Again, I'm making use of a space between my little walkway and the privacy fence here. It's about 2.5 feet wide, and I went ahead and just planted a bunch of flowers to see how they would do. I had some cosmos in here. I think you can see remnants of it here, but the zinnias really took off. They've done really, really well in this space. They're very happy. The butterflies love it. It's fun coming out here, seeing all the beautiful butterflies come, you know, and land on the flowers. I've had hummingbirds. I've had a hummingbird moth a couple times, which is really cool. So really good space. Again, you know, it looks pretty shaded right now, but as the afternoon draws on, this gets a decent chunk of full sun. So the plan for the fall, which I hate to do this because I'm gonna have to pull these out soon, is I do have a bed. It's another oval bed. It's a 2x8, I believe. So I'm gonna put the bed down here. I'm gonna fill it and prep it, and then I'm gonna plant some of my fall garden stuff in it. So that's kind of my plan in the coming month for this section. And then moving forward, I'll have that bed, and then eventually, I think once I get this space cleaned up back here, I will do another 2x8 bed down that way, and just give myself, again, a bit of a bigger growing footprint, because I'm all about squeezing out as much footprint as I can when it comes to growing in the garden. Speaking of fall garden, here are my starts that I started several weeks ago. Some cabbages, kale, Brussels sprouts, all sort of goodies. So they have been hardening off this week, and I plan on planting them out in the coming week. So stay tuned. I believe my next video is going to be focusing on that. All right, then we have this kind of a side bed on our house. This bed faces south, so it gets a ton of sun. It does pretty well, but it's also been a work in progress in terms of soil health and seeing what does well here and what doesn't. Now, previously I had a cherry tomato here that's since been pulled. That was in one of my previous videos. I also had some cucumbers here on this makeshift makeshift trellis that's not great, but those did well, but then I eventually pulled them. I have remnants of some marigolds. They're still kicking, and then I've since planted along the base of this some snap peas and another cucumber plant. Nothing's germinated yet, which has me worried because I did that weeks ago, but maybe the soil's just been too dry. I do come out here and water it every day, try to give it a good water, but sometimes it's just hard to keep up with the pounding sun that is drying out the soil. So maybe I need to come in and throw some more straw down. That might actually not be a bad idea. And we are wrapping up our tour here, which is good because it's getting hot. This is the patio tour, I suppose you can call it, back deck tour or whatever. Not a lot to see right now. There is some remnants of plants that planted out at the beginning of the season. So my parsley is still doing okay. My mint is still hanging in, although I think if I just prune it back, it'll probably be healthier. And then I previously had some patio choice tomatoes that were done, pulled them out. I've since planted a scallop squash and a bunch of cilantro, which actually looks like it is germinating, so that's good. And then of course my strawberry tower here that is not very pretty right now. I need to go in, I need to prune some of the dead foliage and just try to maybe fertilize too. We just had so much rain this year. Nothing did great. Nothing did super great. But that's okay. Lessons are learned, and at least with the strawberries, if I can keep these guys healthy and then stored correctly over winter, they should be ready to go in the spring. All right, everyone, thank you again for hanging out with me here in the garden today, taking a look at all of the things that are happening. And while, yes, there are a lot of empty spaces, there is a lot yet to come. So stay tuned for the next video where I hope to transform some of these spaces. Might be saying goodbye to these beautiful flowers, but getting the fall garden planted so that we can continue to have some successful harvests into the rest of the year. Hey, don't forget to comment down below, click the like button, and subscribe if you haven't done so already. And seriously, I love to read your comments. Let me know what you're growing in your garden, how it's going, and what zone you're in. Thanks. Bye.